Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with the latest on the presidential race and a new poll showing sustained momentum for Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. The Bloomberg News Morning Consult survey shows Harris leading former President Donald Trump by 2 percentage points among registered voters in the 7 states likely to decide the election. The poll shows Harris ahead by 1 point among likely voters. That is a statistical dead heat. The margin of error is 1 percentage point across the 7 states. But Bloomberg's Kayleigh Line says for Harris, the results are a big momentum swing.
It might be hard for Harris and her campaign to claim now that she is the underdog in this race. Granted, we are within the margin of error in basically all of these states except Wisconsin, where this poll shows her up 8 points over Trump, 52 to 44. But in the other states, it is much closer.
Bloomberg's Kayleigh Lines notes Harris leads by 4 percentage points in Pennsylvania and Nevada, 3 points in Michigan, 2 points in Georgia and North Carolina, and the results show the candidates are dead even in Arizona. Kayleigh Lines says Harris's electoral map is expanding beyond the so-called blue wall states.
Remember, Joe Biden, when he was still in this race, was essentially only focused on the so-called blue wall, the Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That was really his only clear path to potential victory. For Harris, now looking at this map, it does open up the Sun Belt for her and potentially gives her more ways in which she could go to 270 electoral college votes.
And Bloomberg's Kayleigh Lines notes the poll shows Harris trimming Trump's advantage by 11 points on the rising cost of everyday goods, but survey participants still trust the former president more when it comes to gas prices and the stock market.
Well, Nathan, the new survey comes as Kamala Harris sits down for her first interview since taking over the Democratic ticket just over a month ago. Speaking with Dana Bash of CNN, Harris doubled down on her pledge to target price gouging and said her day one priority would be to support the middle class.
Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it, which is why my agenda includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging.
Vice President Harris also addressed criticism over shifting positions on issues like energy and immigration. Harris was asked about her 2019 pledge to ban fracking. She says she shortly backed off that stance and isn't going back.
I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020 that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
Vice President Harris also told CNN she believes voters are ready to turn the page on former President Trump.
Well, meanwhile, Karen, the former president was at a town hall in Wisconsin. He said he watched some of Vice President Harris's interview and didn't like what he saw.
She didn't look like a leader to me, I'll be honest. I don't see her negotiating with President Xi of China. I don't see her with Kim Jong-un like we did with Kim Jong-un.
Former President Trump also tried to flip the script on the weird label that Harris's running mate Tim Walz has put on him and his running mate J.D. Vance. Trump said Walz is the weird one.
Well, Nathan, the former president also looked to address areas of concern for his campaign, repeating a new pledge to have all in vitro fertilization costs covered for free.
For people that are using IVF, which is fertilization, the government is going to pay for it, or we're going to get or mandate your insurance company to pay for it.
Former President Trump has not provided details on how he'd mandate it. The new Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll shows swing state voters trust Harris over Trump to protect personal freedom, and that her lead over Trump on the issue of abortion is widening. 55% of swing state voters favor her position compared to 34% for Trump.
All right, Karen, let's turn now to markets and the economy. The Dow closed Thursday's session at a record high after a slew of encouraging economic data. Today, traders get another key piece of data before the Fed's next rate decision. The central bank's preferred inflation gauge, the PCE deflator, is due out at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. Bloomberg's Michael McKee has a preview.
Americans appear to have ramped up their spending as the second quarter went on. Revisions to second quarter GDP released yesterday suggest we'll see a healthy jump in both goods and services consumption. At the same time, inflation continues to cool. Still, the central bankers have indicated they are more focused on the labor market than prices at the moment. While that will put more weight on next week's jobs report, today's data are likely to cheer Fed officials and bias them toward a 0.25 percentage point cut in the nation's benchmark lending rate next month. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Mike, thanks. And while the Dow climbed yesterday, the tech-heavy NASDAQ finished lower, weighed down by NVIDIA's 6.4% drop after Wednesday's blowout earnings and a tepid forecast. Gene Munster with Deepwater Asset Management says investors should stick with the chip giant.
It's a belief, a strong belief. I'm staking my career that AI is having a bigger impact than the internet. At some point, when you're a hardware-only company, there is a point of deceleration that needs to be taken into consideration. And I think that 2 years, 3 years from now, this may be a position that will trim. But we think today is the time to own it.
Gene Munster with Deepwater Asset Management says NVIDIA will continue to remain central to the artificial intelligence boom. And checking shares of NVIDIA this morning, they're higher, up 1.5%.
And sticking with the AI theme, Karen, sources tell Bloomberg News NVIDIA's discussed joining a funding round for OpenAI that would value the artificial intelligence startup at more than $100 billion. NVIDIA's reportedly discussed investing about $100 million. And it's not the only big tech giant getting in on the action. Sources tell us Apple and Microsoft have also been in talks about taking part in the financing. This follows a Bloomberg report that the funding round for OpenAI would be led by Thrive Capital, which is investing about $1 billion.
Elsewhere on the chip front here, Nathan, Intel now discussing various scenarios to stem its losses. And Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us now. And John, among the possibilities here is a split?
Yeah, Karen, that's right. Our sources tell us the possibilities include this split of its product design and manufacturing businesses, as well as which factory projects might potentially be scrapped. Intel's longtime bankers, Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, they've been providing advice on the possibilities, which could also include potential M&A. Intel right now trying to navigate the most difficult period in its 56-year history. These discussions have only grown more urgent since the company delivered that grim earnings report. You'll recall that sent the shares plunging to their lowest level since 2013. Now, potential separation or sale of Intel's foundry division, that would be an about-face for the CEO, Pat Gelsinger. Gelsinger's viewed that business as key to restoring Intel's standing and gives you some indication of just how serious this situation is. Shares pre-market right now, they are up just over 2%. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The holiday travel rush is already underway for the long Labor Day weekend. The TSA says more than 17 million people are expected to be screened at the nation's airports between today and next Wednesday. Experts say those hitting the roads will fare better, too. A lot of people are driving out of town, partly because of lower prices at the gas pumps. Gas prices are averaging $3.36 a gallon nationwide, roughly 46 cents less than last year. AAA's Jenna Tidwell.
Typically with any holiday, 85 to 90% of travelers go by car. It's the most convenient and likely the most cost-effective for a family.
If you're driving today, you'll want to leave before noon or after 7 p.m. A Long Island man was arrested after authorities accuse him of shooting his ex-wife and her boyfriend to death inside their home after calling his teen daughter to warn her to leave. Police said that Daniel Coppola forced his way into the St. James home late Wednesday of his ex-wife Kelly Coppola and her partner Kenneth Pullman and allegedly shot them dead. Coppola has been charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. There are growing concerns about mosquito-borne diseases ahead of the holiday weekend. Health officials in Wisconsin confirmed 2 people have now died from West Nile virus in that state this year. Cases of West Nile now in more than 30 states. John Proctor of Missouri says his teenage son is paralyzed from the neck down after being diagnosed with West Nile earlier this month.
To see him lethargic and struggle to do simple, basic functions, it's hard.
In New York, crews say they will continue to spray to prevent West Nile. In Massachusetts, health officials are concerned after what's believed to be the country's 6th known person infected with PCE, another rare but potentially lethal mosquito-borne virus. This week, 1 man died of PCE in New Hampshire. Editor-at-large for Public Health at KFF, Dr. Celine Gounder.
Most people with PCE don't develop symptoms, but symptoms of PCE may include headache, seizures, behavior changes, and drowsiness. About 30% of people who get PCE die, which is why it is so serious. and many survivors have long-term neurological problems.
Dr. Gounder spoke to CBS. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Open moves into the third round today without the guy who was favored to win the men's singles. Carlos Alcaraz won the Open 2 years ago. This year he won the French, then Wimbledon for the second time. But last night he was stunned in round 2 by an unknown from the Netherlands. Guy with a very long last name, Botic van de Sandschulp, ranked 74th, came to the Open with a record this year of 11 and 18. He not only beat Alcaraz, he beat him handily. 6-1, 7-5, 6-4. Here was Alcaraz after the match.
It's a fight against myself, in my mind during the match. In tennis, you are playing against someone that wants the same as you, is to win the match, and you have to be as much calm as you can.
Last time the Open's betting favorite lost this early in the tournament, 1999. That was due to an injury. Two-time Open champ Naomi Osaka, who's back playing after a long layoff that followed having a baby, lost her second-round match. The Mets won at Arizona 3-2. Pete Alonso hit his 29th home run, and then Francisco Lindor his 28th, and then Jose Iglesias with a go-ahead hit with 2 outs in the ninth inning. Now the Mets get to play the White Sox, who have a record of 31 and 104. The Yankees tonight host St. Louis. Two Bay Area athletes with contract news. Wide receiver Brandon Ayuk, who wanted a trade if he didn't get the deal he wanted from the 49ers, signed for 4 years, $120 million. And Steph Curry added another year onto his deal with the Warriors, and in 2026-27, he'll make $62 million. Scotty Scheffler is in good shape to make $25 million on Sunday, already staked to the FedEx Cup lead based on what he's done all year. Scheffler then had the lowest score in the opening round of the Tour Championship in Atlanta. So he's 16 under par, and he leads by 7. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen and Nathan.
All right, John, thank you. Well, if you're listening to us in Boston, here's exciting news. Our new home, beginning September 3rd, that's this coming Tuesday, will be 92.9 FM. That's the day after Labor Day. Bloomberg Radio moving to 92.9 FM in Boston.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. Vice President Kamala Harris was pressed about her past positions on issues like fracking and immigration reform as she sat down for her first interview as a presidential candidate on CNN.
The most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed.
But the dynamics of the race have changed, as we're seeing in the latest Bloomberg News Morning Consult swing state poll. For more, we're joined by the man who wrote the story about it, Bloomberg News national political reporter Gregory Cordy. Gregory, good morning. I think we saw the beginnings of a momentum shift in this race the last time we did this poll a month ago as Harris joined it. What does this newest poll show us?
Hey, good morning, Nathan. So this is the poll that we did immediately after the Democratic National Convention last week. Pollsters tend to look for moments like that to see if there's a bounce. Traditionally, presidential candidates get a little bit of a boost in the polls right after accepting their party's nomination for president. And in this case, we didn't really see a huge bounce. There's a 1 percentage point difference that could be explained by the margin of error in Harris going up over the previous month. But it certainly shows that the honeymoon is continuing for her. As you said, when she entered the race a month ago, she really improved the Democrats' chances really across all of these 7 swing states. We now see her at least tied or winning in all 7 states. Wisconsin is the one that she's doing the best in. And then Michigan, Pennsylvania, the blue wall states she continues to do well in. But the big difference between Harris and Biden is that Harris now opens up the Sun Belt. We're talking about Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. And the really most interesting state in the poll this month is North Carolina, where she's up by 2 points. That's a state that Donald Trump was leading by 10 points as recently as April. So if she's competitive in North Carolina, that really puts Donald Trump on the defensive and makes it a whole new race.
Which could explain why we were told by Republican National Committee co-chair Laura Trump this week that they're going to be pouring quite a lot of resources into North Carolina as well. What does this poll tell us about where voters see the candidates on the issues that really matter to them? I know we've been focusing a lot, particularly on the economy, on inflation. What are we finding there?
Yeah, we really zoomed in on the economy in this tracking poll for two reasons. One is we're Bloomberg, right? That's what we cover. But also, it's the most important issue for the voters in all of these swing states and nationally, especially given the inflation that we've seen over the past couple of years. And the remarkable thing is that voters don't say that the economy is necessarily doing any better than it has been the past year or so. They still say that inflation is too high, and they still say that they were better off under Trump than they are under Biden. But what's remarkable here is that poor economy is not attaching itself to Kamala Harris. The vice president is not being held accountable for the economy under this president. And so on a wide range of economic issues, who do you trust more on housing costs? Who do you trust more on having wages go up, on student loans and personal debt? Voters trust Harris now more than Trump across these swing states. And that's really going to be concerning to President Trump, because that was going to be his major argument in this election. The fact that it's not sticking to Harris is something that Trump is going to have to try to figure out how to hold Harris accountable for this administration's economic policies.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.